Welcome to this month's class interview, however you want to call it, Divine Dialogues, where we are having conversations about spirituality and the journey that has taken us here with different powerhouse women in my community. I am so incredibly excited to bring forward my friend Sarah today. Sarah and I have known each other for, I don't know, probably about a decade, I would guess, or close to it.
I was doing the math and like definitely before like 2009 probably.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so over
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
decade. And when we met, we were both in very completely different places in our
hmm
lives. And so now to be in this place where we have kind of deepened in our journeys, where we have embodied like new ways of being from the healing and the releasing that we've done over our time, we found ourselves here. And so when I found out that she has kind of shifted her positioning to be talking about money and the magic of money and how um, it's beautiful and energetic and sacred. And I know that that's something that a lot of us in the healing capacity carry a wound around. I was like, oh, please, Sarah, please come and have one of our calls with us. So I feel really, really, really blessed that we've got you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's
I
very
love
exciting.
talking about money in the context of spirit for sure.
Yeah. So can we maybe like, I mean, since I know you, that's a whole thing, but like, can you
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about or share a little bit about how you ended up here in the first
Yeah.
place? Because it's been a bit of a
Um,
wild journey for you.
it has been a totally wild journey. And one of the things I like to share is that I don't come from a background of, you know, accounting. I don't have an MBA. I'm not, I don't have a history on Wall Street. So I didn't come from like the world of money, so to speak, to teach it. I have always been, a seeker and into personal development and growth. And, 4 years ago, I it got to a point where my relationship with money was so painful and causing me so much stress and anxiety that I had to do something. And so where I was at, I was in my, I'll be honest, my early to mid 40s. And
It's a safe space. You can
I,
talk
I
about
know,
your age
I
here.
know, I know. Well, a lot of people, and the reason I want to share that openly is because a lot of people feel like, oh, it's too late. I can't, they get to a certain stage in life, and because you always keep hearing about, oh, you should start young. And well, yeah, of course it helps, but it's never ever too late to learn about money and to get into the right relationship with money. So I just want to dispel any myths around that right now. Um, and I was in a position where I had probably for honestly 5 years, 4 to 5 years prior to 2019, been trying hard to like fix my problems with money. And so for me, that looked like I was getting farther and farther behind in my taxes. And in 2019, I was 6 years and seven returns behind because I had a duplicate return 1 year for biz and personal. I, midlife looking at the bottom, like the downward slope of heading towards retirement. I had no idea how much I needed, no idea how to like calculate or yeah, it was like this blank um kind of space that was just felt overwhelming because I'm was single, still am, and the thought of like just having my income, like it was just really overwhelming. So it was the taxes, it was that, and then just the incredible shame around being an intelligent, articulate, educated woman and having no knowledge about finances and financial literacy. And I'll never forget I was going away for a weekend with some girlfriends, and it had the weight of all of this had gotten so heavy that the voice was constant of like, you can't do this, you can't have fun, you can't enjoy yourself because you need to get your shit done, you need to get your shit figured out with money. And it was affecting me that much. So not only was I stressed about all of those things, I was also carrying this like, you know the devil on the shoulder, right, chirping in my ear. And I stumbled across my mentor, and I just knew she was the one for me because I had tried to get help in different ways, but it was all like structures and systems, and I wasn't being taught. I was just trying to get someone else to do things for me. And my mentor, Brenda, was like, this is a personal journey. It's a job. You have to look at your stuff and get literate and learn. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I'm like, yep, she's nailed it on the head. And I could see all the ways that I had been like trying to fix the problem, but not really fixing the problem. And I dove in for 3 months. It was right at the beginning of COVID. So a month into my program, we were in lockdown. So, what else was I going to do? I was locked in my apartment. And I just dove into the work, and I ended up falling in love with it. It was because I love growth work and development work. That's the piece I loved about it, was how deeply personal and transformative it was to heal it for myself, but also witness the other people in my group heal. And I was like, whoa, this has some meat, this money work. And I've been doing all kinds of different stuff to, like, I knew that I wanted to coach and like help people. I knew I wanted to shift my career into that, but I didn't know for what. And at that point, I just knew it was money. And I ended up working with my mentor in her program for 2 years alongside her, sort of as a, you know, TA sort of capacity, or assistant coach, or, eventually kind of head coach. And I had my own clients within her program. And then I really felt the call to do my own thing. And I wanted to teach things differently and teach different things than she was teaching. And I just thought, I can't have that inside me and stay with her. So we parted ways very amicably. We still are in touch and love each other dearly. And Sacred Wealth was born.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
I know you started off with this idea of like, I'm not an accountant, I don't have an MBA, but I
Yeah,
actually think that that's your magic, because when we look
totally.
at money, or at least my experience with it, because I also had a very difficult relationship, a very muddy relationship with money for a very long time. And it was when I did a bunch of clearing work that we had our huge financial breakthrough.
Mhm.
Um, but I think what's important is that, like, because we're taught the book learning part of it, if we're taught at all, we're taught the book
Mhm.
learning and like the discipline, and like it's almost like that hard masculine approach to money.
Yep.
But if you have wounding underneath it, if you have like ancestral stuff, if you have
Yep.
things from past lives, like there's so
Yep.
many facets to it, that if you try to make it an entirely intellectual approach and you leave out the heart and you leave out the spirit, the
Mhm.
problems are just going to resurface. They'll find new ways. It's like a highway,
Yeah.
right? With all the different heads.
Totally. And I would say even the opposite. Part of my money journey, actually, I was working with someone that focused only on the energetics and only on the affirmations and meditations. And again, really valuable, but it didn't keep me in the like here and now of like looking at my numbers.
Hmm.
How do I leverage the financial products? What do I need to know about banks? What do I need to know about credit scores? And for people who are feel more connected, who are more spiritual, who that can be tough, is to bring it into the here and now and make it really um like, what's the word, not tangible, but like concrete, right? Like really ground it into your life. It's sometimes easier to stay in the dreamy place about it. And that's one of the things I say that because I had to learn it myself. It's easier to like sort of fantasize or dream about all the things I want. It's a whole different thing to actually put numbers to it and like get down to brass tacks and how you're going to make it happen.
Hmm.
But to your point, it is both. Like you have to do both things. And I'll share part of my story in terms of the ancestral piece. It was such an unlock for me. Is I had this foreboding feeling of, especially because I was single, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to work forever to support myself in my um, silver fox years. And when I was unraveling my epigenetics and my family history, well, I come from a lineage of farmers. My dad, I grew up on a farm the, first 6, 7 years of my life. My father grew up on a farm, grandfather, like it goes back, right? And in farming, there's a very powerful association with the physical labor that you put in for the money that you get out. And so I had this subconscious belief, and I didn't even know that I had it until it was called out for me, is that I feel that if I make more money, that means that I will have to expend more energy.
Mm.
Right, but it also meant that I would be more exhausted. And there was it until it was said out loud to me, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. And from then it lifted, right? And it's not mine. I don't have to carry this. And I did some healing work around that. Sidebar is like I learned EFT tapping from my mentor, and now I'm trained and certified. So that modality has been huge. And then of course just the writing and the processing and even just the moment to moment awareness of when that starts to like sneak back in and be like, oh, and you can just halt it in its tracks and do something different. And it's those moments that are so pivotal. When you see the thing start to happen again, you're like, that's that's just old stuff coming in. I don't need to let it take the driver's seat.
I know that a lot of people kind of, especially if they're new to their spiritual journey, I think there is like this belief that you get to a place where suddenly you're just above it all and like you're some Zen master and whatever. And it's like, no, you
No.
can see it better, you'll
Mhm.
recover faster,
Yeah,
but shit still happens. Like, no matter how
totally.
devoted we are to our practice, we're still human. We came here to have these experiences. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that it was like, yeah, and then it comes back and you're like, okay, great. But what you've done essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, is you've built a toolkit so that when it shows up, you're just like, okay, what's
Yeah.
the right remedy for this
Yeah.
particular pain?
1000%. I talk about it as an arc,
Mm.
and I'll try and keep it in the window like an arc.
Our
And
tiny little
so
circles.
there's this moment here where you have the awareness. You're like, oh my gosh, I do this thing, or I act in this way, or I have this reaction, or I have this response. And then something will happen again to like trigger that, and it might happen again. And you might do the whole thing again. And I tell people, don't beat yourself up if that happens, because you probably are going to notice again. And then when the next thing happens, then, oh, maybe you catch yourself like in the middle of it, or like just as you're like about to do something, like, oh, and you can catch yourself. And then as it continues to happen, you catch yourself earlier and earlier in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start to circumvent it. And I just say that because it's so important to have deep compassion for ourselves as we try and work through this, and well, through anything, whether it's money or whatever particular practice you're trying to shift in your life. um this practice of like, I am learning to XYZ, whatever the thing is. For me, it was, I am learning to spend money differently. I am learning to live within my means. I am learning to, and just um not beating myself up when I tripped,
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't fall down ever again, really. Like I would trip, or I'd do something and like, oh, that was not in alignment, or that wasn't part of it, but you see it. And it's just being really present and patient with yourself in those moments.
Yeah, for me, it is safe for me to X, because the learning
Mhm.
part is one thing, but for me, I have a very, especially with money, even now, I have a very nervous system reaction. So I go,
Mm,
historically, when I would go to pay bills, even though the money that was in the account, there was something about parting
yeah.
with the money that I would
Yeah.
feel this like surge of fight or flight. And then I turned it into this really, I was saying it sounds like I'm a Disney princess. I had this like little song that I would sing as I was paying my bills. And it was cutesy and a little weird and whatever. Thank God the neighbors can't hear you. But like it was
Mhm.
something I had to almost ritualize and to
Yes.
bring something playful to it so that the rest of me could feel safe to do this thing that was
Absolutely.
actually safe to. There was no tiger in my office. You
No,
know what I mean? But the body is
no.
just like, holy shit. And there's that
Yeah.
tension. And I think so long as we have that relationship, it makes us unwilling to spend money, unwilling to pay bills.
Mhm.
It keeps us in denial. It keeps us really
Mhm.
disconnected. And that's also going to be like a major block for money to flow, like inward.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I learned about, well, I kind of knew this before, but that the energetics of abundance is circular, you know? I mean, Scrooge McDuck taught us that, right? You can't hoard things, right? Um it's not as loving and, energetically aligned with abundance as, buying the turkey for the family. And that's such a simple but beautiful example, right, of allowing money to flow in and flow out and through your life. um where was I going with that? And that's actually one of the things I talk really clearly about in with my clients, is when they're creating these structures and systems for themselves. Yeah, we want to create a container for money to come in and stay, because some people actually have I'm trying to figure out where the camera is. Some people actually have like a sieve, right? Like it's not a container, it's a sieve. So it comes in and it goes right out. Comes
Mm-hmm.
into your checking account. I'll just use the example here. Like if you work for someone else, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks, it lands in your checking account. You pay your rent, you pay your bills, and then you like, oh, relief, it's payday. I'm gonna go out for a nice dinner, and I'm gonna, buy some shoes I've had an eye on. And then like, woo, 5 days later, you're like, man, I gotta make it last for, 9 or 10 more days till next payday. Um, and it's incredible the number of people who I've had to explain that saving money is actually a habit. It's something that you learn, just as like spending money is becoming your habit. Saving money just needs to become a new habit. And for people who have lived in poverty, even, money comes in and it goes out right away because they're just trying to like pay pay bills and pay, you know, rent to keep the lights on and to keep the roof over their head. And so there's this nervous system response of like not being able to hold on to money because it's always going out when it comes in. So there's all these really fascinating, like back to what you were talking about, this sort of somatic and epigenetics and ancestral stuff. It's really fascinating how it plays out in our day-to-day lives and habits. And that's honestly part of my favorite part of the work, is helping people understand what's theirs and what's not. And
Mm.
when those moments, just like for me, right, with the farming thing, it's those moments of like, oh my gosh, yeah, I did learn that. And it's just something I need to learn to do differently. And then we build that into your system. So,
I
yeah.
love that. So
Mhm.
what are some of the other tools that you have in your toolkit? Like you mentioned EFT. What
Yeah.
else have you got?
I mean, for me, it was really around, when it came to money, two things that were really impactful for me is, one is I don't live out of that checking account that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this realization that the money that I am paid, because well, I still have an employer in addition to doing my coaching. So I'll talk from the context of having an employer. So the money I make every 2 weeks is not for the next 2 weeks, it's for my whole life. And I had to understand what parts of that paycheck needed to go to all the different parts of my life. The part of my life, yes, that needed to live and enjoy lattes and, you know, go to dinner with friends, that part needed to be taken care of for the next 2 weeks. The part of me 6 months from now, when I need to pay my annual car insurance, needs to be taken care of. The part of me 20 years from now, when, I want to retire, or, however long that part needs to be taken care of. To me, probably 5 years or 3 years from now, when I need to buy a new car, that person needs to be taken care of. And so just feeling so good about that piece, and having so much trust in myself and also in the system and how money was flowing into and through it, and sometimes being caught and staying there, Um, so that was huge for me too, is to just, so now to kind of go back to your point, one of the tools is that um, I have it's called my allowance, and it's a card that I put money on the 1st and the 15th of the month. So I don't even exist by my employer's paycheck cycles anymore. I exist from the 1st to the 15th of the month, and just really separating that was so helpful. And I can do whatever I please with that money on that card. I have the freedom to spend on whatever I want. If I want to like blow it all on a really amazing dinner out, I can do that. I just really have to, eat the pantry for the next 10 days. Um, so yeah, that's been a huge difference for me. And just really separating out the money that I need to set aside for my life and the money that I need to live on for the next 2 weeks. Um, Other tools is making time for my money and looking at it. So once a month now, I sit down and I look at my numbers, and well, I mean, the system I've created anyway, but like, update my net worth. I, scan all my credit cards to make sure that there's no fraudulent charges. And I just get really comfortable with looking and where I'm at. And if something changes in my life and I have to tweak something, I can do it at that particular, money date. But other than that, it's pretty minimal, the amount of time that I spend on my money. And so aside from the work that I put into creating the system in that, first 3 months, and the odd tweak here and there as we go on, just having that system that I built feels so powerful. And so, yeah, it's like a little, you know, chest puff, kind of like, yeah, I did that. And I built it and I trust it and it works for me. As opposed to literally, years and admittedly decades of not even knowing how to calculate my net worth, not even, yeah, knowing how to do any number of things financially. So, that's another tool. But in terms of in the moment stuff, tapping for sure. If I'm in a place where it's not as obvious for me, say, to tap, I do like breath work. Right, breath work's become quite well known, and the simple thing I do is just, I call it the Vegas breath. I don't know, I that's what I've just called it. But it's all it is lengthening your exhale by twice the amount that you inhale. And that stimulates your vagus nerve, and it calms your body. So I find even if I'm like driving and I'm rushing home, I'm like, I don't need to be driving and like anxious in the car right, or I don't need to be anxious while I'm driving in the car right now. Just a couple breaths at the stoplight will just help me get back into my body, and focusing on my feet, my extremities, focusing on your hands and your feet. I love, and then dancing. Dance breaks. You want to shift some energy real fast? Dance it
Love it.
out.
Yeah.
For sure.
I literally
Yeah.
sent an email to my list today that was saying, like, we need to make a new playlist, guys. Like, what are we,
Oh, heck yeah.
what's inspiring us these days for this exact reason?
Yeah.
You know what I'm hearing almost in between the lines, the way you're describing these things is, rather than being in that place of feeling constricted or deprived because you've made these like boundaries,
Mhm.
it really sounds like what you've done is set yourself up for future gifts to yourself, like, or gifts to
Yeah.
your future self.
Yeah.
And so it's
Yeah.
actually very loving and very almost self-care to a degree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I talk about that a lot, actually. You hit on a lot of things. I could go on many different tangents here. Um, so part of the awareness that I teach is the difference between self-care and self-soothing.
Mm-hmm.
So self-soothing, and I'm gonna weave in a couple of other terms called hedonic pleasure and eudaimonic pleasure. So a hedonic pleasure, we all probably or maybe have heard about. It's really associated with like sexual pleasure, but in general, it just means like something pleasurable. It could be like eating a delicious dessert or smoothie or whatever, having a bubble bath. So anything that's pleasurable. And so when we think about self-soothing, we're looking for hedonic pleasure, like those quick shifts that we want to make in our nervous system to like calm us down, de-stress, reduce anxiety. And that can be something like some of the things mentioned, right? I'm going to dance, I'm going to tap, I'm going to do some breathing, which are on the like healthy side of hedonic. And then the less healthy ways are, oh, I'm going to fall down the scroll hole on Instagram or TikTok. I'm going to drink. I'm going to YouTube or Netflix and chill, substance abuse, all that kind of stuff is hedonic pleasure, right? You're trying to remove a pain, and you can do that in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. And I don't want to knock, Netflix and chill, because goodness knows we all need that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But having the awareness of the amount that you're doing, the sort of unhealthy versus healthier ways of nervous system soothing, is part of the practice. And that's just like moment to moment awareness, because gosh, is it easy to just, start scrolling, right? It can take a lot of self determination and intention in those moments to do something different. So self-soothing, short-term solution, hedonic pleasure. Self-care is like much deeper, longer term regulation of your nervous system. So self-care is often the harder stuff. So getting your butt off the couch and going to the gym, meditation practice, taking your vitamins, going to the doctor, something's not right, therapy. Right? These are the less sexy things, but they have these long-term impacts on our health and our self-care. And of course, being a money coach, because money is such a source of stress and anxiety for people, I count that in self-care. And when I heard this, I don't know, I want to say a decade ago, someone said, living within your means is a form of self-care. It felt so deeply true to me. But I was like, but I don't get how to do that. This was years and years before I found this work, but now I get it. And looping back to what you were saying, as the structure and the boundaries. So one of my careers has been project management, which is, I have a lot of respect for the industry. Obviously, I did it for like 10 years, still do it to a certain degree. And what I found as a project manager is if you do all this pre-work for any project, whether it's like an event or, I did retail store openings, you do all this pre-work and you're like down, it's almost, it almost feels like OCD, right? Like you're planning everything. And then what happens is that when the thing actually starts to happen, or like the event happens or the store starts to open, everything just flows. It doesn't mean that the system doesn't change or that like you have to tweak something, but there's so much foundation there that you can flex with the things that happen, the wrenches that get thrown in the cogs, right? And it's the same with money. So yes, there's the system and a structure that I have my clients build. It's certainly customizable for people's values, for different types of income. That's the other thing I love about money, is it's totally different for every person. It's not a cut and paste thing. And so what I found is having the structure, having the automations go where they needed to go. So let me explain that. So for example, hydro bill is a great example. So we all pay our electricity bill in every month. I used to, you get the paper bill in the mail and then you send it in, and then, things transition. You can now pay it by credit card, and you can get it in BC where we live. It comes every usually 2 months, and then you pay it on your credit card, but it's a varied amount. Well, I automated that whole process. I called them up and I said, here's where I live. How much do I spend a year on electricity. We divided it into 12 amounts. So I pay the same amount every month and it comes right out of my checking account. So where my paycheck goes, right? So that's now the account that everything gets taken care of. So at one call, and I never have to think about my hydro bill again, my electric bill again. So it's about taking anything as much manual out of our finances as we can. And you're right, is having those boundaries does create freedom and space. And I'll go back again to the example of the allowance card, that I know that I have $400 to spend between the 1st and the 15th of every month. I get to choose how I spend it. If I want to go to Costco and do a big haul, I mean, side note, I have a little extra account that I put money into for Costco stock ups. But, yeah, if I wanted to go to a nice dinner and spend 200 of that $400, that's fine. I can do that. I just know that I'm going to have to be accountable for that action and live a little differently for the 2 weeks after that. So it's a different way of perceiving it, because often when I tell people, how do I say this? When I ask people how they feel about the word budget, there's usually this like, you know, there's this constriction and a retraction, because of exactly what you said. There's I can't remember the word you used, but it's restrictive and it feels sort of oppressive. But I have reframed. I don't like the word budget either because of that reaction. So I actually call it a spending plan. We
Mm.
all have to spend money in our lives. Like, that is a given. We spend money on our rent. We spend money on our utilities. We spend money on, our streaming subscriptions so that we can enjoy music and have dance breaks on the sidewalk if we want to. So spending money is a given. And so let's just acknowledge it. We have to spend, but it's how we're going to spend the money, and we're going to factor ourselves into that spending. So again, we're going to factor in like the me in the next 2 weeks. We're going to factor in the me in 3 months and 5 years and 10 years and 20 years. So even just saying that to people, it's usually like, oh, okay, yeah, that does feel different.
These are actually, I really love the idea of the automation. I remember the first time I started putting things on auto pay, that's probably the richest I ever felt, because it
Yeah,
meant that I could trust that that money
yeah,
was available.
yeah.
But I also love, because I've done a lot of looking over the last few years at like habit forming and habit breaking, if we're honest.
Yeah, totally.
And
I've been diving into habits lately too. It's interesting work. Yeah.
yeah, and to like, automation takes away the willpower component of habit forming, because
Yeah,
it's just done for you. You don't even have to think about
exactly.
it.
Exactly.
This is going to sound like a weird question maybe, but like a lot of what we're talking about is very practical, very 3D. Like,
Mhm.
it's here.
Yeah,
Um what was it that made you choose sacred wealth? Like, why or
yeah,
how, or like what was the importance of
yeah.
it not just being like X kind of money coach, like whatever kind, like
Totally. Yeah,
why
yeah,
why
yeah.
the sacred?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because we have been talking about what, well, I call it in my method, it's like the IQ. So I call it financial IQ, which is the financial literacy, which is like the systems and the habits. The financial EQ, which is your personal relationship with money, is kind of where we're going now. And so for me, there was a big realization. Um, it kind of was an awareness, and then as I kept learning more, it was like, oh my gosh, money is not the system. And I realized that one of my blocks was like a deep, deep distrust and well, mistrust of Wall Street, banking, um, investors, hedge fund, like all the, Wolf of Wall Street. You see all these glorified movies of like, you know, the hub of New York and everything. And I was like, I can't get behind money if being good at money means turning into that. I want no part of it. And so there was a subconscious kind of version of that belief
Mm.
Like, I don't want to get good with money because it means that I will have to engage with a toxic system, and I don't trust the system, and maybe I don't trust myself enough to not like fall into the trap of it. And what I learned over time is that money is something very different than the system. So all of the crap that you see in the movies, that is greed. These are human failings. These are ego failings, right? Power, greed, all of that stuff. But money in itself is actually really, really beautiful. So if I have a friend that says, you know, oh my gosh, this horrible thing happened, can you help me out this month? Can you give me like $500? 100%, I'll give you $500. That's not toxic. That's not greedy. That's not, you know. So there's a beautiful exchange there. And when I really started to like look for more and more examples of that, like I donate money to causes that I really care about that are making a huge difference in the world. That's not toxic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, buying coffee for someone behind me in the line at the coffee shop, that's not toxic. That actually brings a lot of joy. Actually, I have a fantastic story about this. I um so it ties into what we're saying, but it also has to do with receiving money and allowing yourself to receive. So that's the sort of context in which I'm telling the story. I was meeting a friend once for dinner, and when I got there, he was telling me how he got there early, so for about 20 minutes, half an hour, an older woman had been staring at him from across the restaurant. And it wasn't like, it was weird because, she was staring at him, but it wasn't like cruelly or anything. It was, I guess she kind of was smiling and looking at him. And finally, she walked over to him, handed him $100 bill, and said, "You remind me so much of my son. Would you please accept this gift?" And at first, there's this sort of habitual, "Oh, no, I couldn't do that." And eventually she wore him down and gave him the money, and he accepted it. And then she went back to sit with her friend or whoever she was with. And, they met eyes a few more times and smiled. And by the time I got there, she had gone. But he's like, "Well, dinner is paid for." I'm like, "What?" So he told me the story. And so we got such a kick out of this. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Our dinner is paid for. So we got some dinner and a couple of drinks, and our bill didn't come to that much. I think it was like 60 something dollars. And so we ended up just leaving the $100 for the tip with like,
Mm.
or leaving the $100 to the waitress. So then she would like her eyes lit up. Oh my God, we got joy. She got joy. Who knows where that extra $40 went? Maybe she was able to buy an extra special take home dinner or something for her kids. Like, who knows?
Mhm.
But it was such a perfect example of like money being beautiful, the act of receiving money being beautiful. I mean, if he had insisted and shut that woman down and not taken the money, it would have shut off that whole flow.
Mhm.
And it's a kind of a micro example, but for me, it's so perfect. Um, an example of both of those things.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And I think we
It's a
need
good
more of
story.
those moments. The
Mhm.
idea of like the pay it forward and all of that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I feel like now that we have had the experience that COVID brought us of
Mhm.
the disconnection and the isolation and the whatever, um, I feel like that really shone a light on how badly we need each other
Yeah,
ultimately. And I
totally.
noticed, like, for myself, like I used to live in Kelowna and then the fires happened, and
Mhm.
I I felt it more this year than I had in previous
Mhm.
years. And the same amount of people that I love were there, and they were
Mhm.
in just as much danger as they were the last time. Because it is every few
Yeah.
years they really
Yeah.
have a lot of trouble. But there was something about it, like one of the causes that I gave to with a GoFundMe that was for firefighters whose fucking houses are burning down and they are
Yeah.
still showing up. And these are volunteers and they're
Yeah.
still showing up
Yeah.
and like saving other people's homes. And there was just
Yeah.
something so heartbreaking and so beautiful about it for me that I was like, yeah, I mean, like if I was in a position to buy you a house, I would do that. Like, because
Totally. Totally.
that service. And I think that's why I love the fact that you're taking this idea of it being sacred. Like,
Mhm.
service is so beautiful and money is just energy. Like it really
It's yeah. Yeah.
amplifies who you are and enables you to express it in the freedom to express it in fuller ways.
Yeah.
Much in the way that even if that woman was really moved by your friend, if she didn't have that $100 to give because she was struggling or whatever, like that also
Mhm.
would have stopped the flow, right?
Yeah.
So
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
being able to be in that state, I think is such a gift, both for the giver and the receiver. Like it really
Yeah.
is quite magical.
Yeah. And I love that. And I want to keep, because I haven't even gotten to the point yet of how I named it now that I think about it, because we're on a beautiful tangent. Um, but I love what you said about giving. And that's one of the things that when I build a system with people, like we build it from a place of your values. So um, if you have a value of um, travel, we're going to put money aside for travel and vacations. If you have a value of like you love music and you want to go to see Beyonce, who was just here, like those aren't cheap tickets, so like let's put aside some money. And if you like, one of my values is so I used to work with youth on one of my previous jobs, and one of my things that I really care about is youth transitioning out of the system, specifically Indigenous youth.
Mhm.
Um, there's a whole sordid history there that I don't want to get into, but for me, it was very important to help that transition as much as I could, because when I was doing the work, it was really sad to see kids who got so used to functioning in the system that then they would just continue functioning in the system as adults, and they weren't helped to support to get out of the system and really thrive. So I donate to it's called SOS Children's Villages, and so they have these transition programs for kids, and that's aligned with my values. And I have a couple other charities that are really important to me, um, that I give to every month. And yeah, as I make more, I give more to those charities as well. And then I also give, there's a bit like set aside for random things, like yeah, when my community is burning or flooding, or I have money to support locally. Um, and I'll just touch on this briefly, because one of the things that I get overwhelmed with, and I know a lot of people do, is, oh my gosh, there's so much, there's so many things that need
Mhm.
to be supported, and we can't give to everything at the expense of ourselves. So pick one or two. Everything helps, and but do it in a way that isn't going to um, mean that you're going to be unsafe,
Mhm.
right? Like find a way to make it so that like you're not compromising yourself too much.
Yeah.
But I want to go back a couple questions of why sacred wealth,
Yeah.
and um, what I realized is how much the system relies on our ignorance,
Mhm.
and the power that we have in learning to the power that we have to shift the system by learning about money, managing it differently, and specifically learning about investing and where our money is going and investing. Um, 85% of the money in the market in like um, EFTs, which I don't want to get too much again into the lingo, but like it's little people money. It's our money. It doesn't
Mhm.
belong to the billionaires. So we have incredible power to shift the system that way. And I realized, wow, learning about money and becoming literate is my act of protest against the system. And so it really helped that part of me that was so counterculture and, oh, Wall Street sucks and guys in suits suck. It really helped me be like, oh, okay, this is my active protest. This is how I'm gonna learn about it. I've become a sponge for financial books and all things like behavior as it relates to habits, and like that I can relate into money and healing the money journey. And then now I get to teach it to other people. Like that's sort of my subversive active protest, is helping people get in right relationship with money. And a real practical example of this is if you invest with your bank, if you have money going into different funds, if you probably people would never consciously be like, oh, I'm going to invest in an arms dealer. If you don't do your diligence and you're just investing in funds that someone in your bank is creating for you, chances are in those funds somewhere, you could be supporting weapons industry, you could be supporting oil and gas, you could be supporting tobacco, you could, so this is why I feel like it's really important for people, like long game, like there's the immediate like personal finance stuff, and then we can get into more investing in my stuff, but like that's where the money really can hit the road, right? And you can start to have a lot more impact. Ethical investing, SRIs, like, sorry, there's a lot of acronyms in the financial world. It's really a bit of it's a thing. So apologies if you're like going cross-eyed listening to me throw out acronyms. I know it's a thing. Anyway, all that to say that there is a lot of power that people have with their money to shift industry. It doesn't take much in a corporation's income statement to make them pay attention. Like 2 to 3% shifts, and they're like, what's going on? So we have a lot of power.
Yeah, and I think we also underestimate the power of how we're spending it too, because every dollar you spend is a vote for your value, really.
Love that. Absolutely, it is.
That was a big one for me with COVID. It was every time I thought about spending, because everything was a bit more constricted, it was, what is the world that I want to see on the other side of this?
Totally.
And making sure like the independent restaurants stayed open. I didn't care about the
Yeah.
fast food changes. It was like,
Yeah.
the diner that I would go to for brunch on the weekend. Like those were the
Yeah.
places that were really important to me.
Absolutely.
They were the ones who were also having the harder time weathering the storm. So it was, we have a lot more power than I think we believe or that we know. And I love being able to use literacy as a tool to say, like, fuck the man.
Yeah. Okay, you said it. I wasn't sure about like
Oh yeah, you can
F-bombs
F-bomb,
in
it's
this
fine.
space. Okay, yeah, no, fuck Wall Street. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nicole, did you have any questions for Sarah? I want to get into like what's coming up next for her, but I don't want to cut you short if you wanted to share.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. It's much more quiet now. No, I don't know that I have questions, but I'm sitting here. I don't know, like my mind's exploding a little bit because there's just so many things. First of all, I love the way you explain the difference between self-soothing and self-care. I never thought of it that way, and that was really eye-opening for me. I think to look at what truly self-care is, and I also don't think that I ever gave money the respect it is owed. Like thinking of it as sacred changes everything. I think for me, it was, I would make money and I would spend money, I'd give it away. I didn't really, I just always knew more would come. And I just don't think I respected it enough. I think I have, like you were talking about all the stories that you carry of why, and I do see some of those, but I think it really comes down to not really respecting it and thinking it as sacred or, one thing I did recognize, though, I just want to say in my life was my father, and his relationship with money and what I've learned from that. But it's shifting in everything you're saying. I just keep thinking about him. He was barely a high school graduate, worked in Procter and Gamble, was a factory worker. It closed down when he was, I don't know, maybe 40. So he decided to sell hot dogs. He first got a cart and then he got a truck. And he did really well. He put my sister through college and he just worked really hard selling hot dogs. But in the meantime, feeling that he was not smart, and he had a stutter. He had to teach himself how to read, like really struggled when he was younger. And he read every Warren Buffett book, anything on investing, like just completely. And he had, a little settlement that they gave him at the factory that he, like buy out when they closed, and he invested all of that and is totally able to live at that and made, a lot of money.
Awesome.
And I'm so proud of him. But the other side of it is the lack of balance. Like he is now obsessed with his worthiness being how much that amount is.
Yeah.
And he's not spending it or living in a way that I feel like, he's really enjoying it. So like some of the things you're saying here, I'm just like, it just makes so much sense. I love investing in your future, but taking care of you now, like all of those pieces. I'm just feel a little mind blown. Like there's just so many things going through my mind where I just know I need to rethink some,
Well, it's like a whole new philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A couple of things I that stuck out with what you shared. First of all, I really love what you said actually about you'd spend money and you just knew more would come. That is actually in itself is so beautiful and powerful. Not many people have that. Well, I shouldn't say not many people have that, but like it is something that people struggle with, trusting that more will come. So don't take that for granted. That's actually a really powerful energy to be in and to leverage. So I just wanted to give you like a little
thank you.
Where's the screen? Two thumbs up for that. That's really beautiful. Hi.
I just realized that my camera was off. Yeah.
And then the other thing, because we look to be of an age, and our parents grew up post-war, right? So there's a very different money mentality at that time that's I see as generational. Like I hear it a lot from, again, my friends in their 40s whose parents grew up post-war. Like it's a thing. So that's I don't know if that like softens or just like brings a little bit more empathy for your dad. And like it is sad, and that people have to, their worth is tied up in anything external. It's really hard in this world to not.
Thanks, capitalism.
Yeah.
Since I know I can swear, fuck you, capitalism.
Like now that's what's on the table. It's fuck you.
But money is so it's such a taboo topic. It's, I think of all of the really deep things that I know about my friends, but I don't know about their money. Like it's so like these deep secrets that I know, but like, no one talks about their money. So it's taboo. It's laced with shame and guilt, and it's like the grossest of cocktails, right? A little dash of shame and a sprinkle of guilt, and
judgment and self-loathing.
Let's just get it out. All that stuff, and I just want to create a different kind of space for people to talk about money. Let's make it cozy. Let's make it funny. Let's make it, real, and look at it from all these different lenses, to really start breaking apart these perceptions that we have about us, like put some cracks in the armor that we have around money. And thank you for coming and just sharing what you did.
Thank
glad.
You. This is amazing. No, thank you so much.
And I have a question too, just in terms of, because I mean, you and I are Canadian. If it sounds to me like your stuff is pretty universal, so you're not stuck to just our system, right?
Right. I'm most familiar with the Canadian, the American system. There are absolutely some universal things. Canada and the US has like same but different, like what we call an RESP, they call a 529. Like there's, but yes, to your point, like how I would coach someone in the UK or Asia Pacific, like there's still principles of like, your income comes in, you have financial institutions that you can leverage. I might not know the specifics, but I can definitely say, look for this, look for that. So yeah.
I have to ask because our people are everywhere. So I was like,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure when they're watching the replay that that this is for them too. I figured it was, but
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, and just, again, because I live in North America, a lot of the times if I talk about retirement, I'll refer to our RSPs or 401ks, but I'll always say that it's a retirement vehicle. So there's someone else in the world is listening. They know that I'm referring to, and they can just relate it to their own country.
mhm.
Mhm.
So with all of that, this has been
Mm.
so beautiful. What's next for you?
Yeah, so two things I'll share. The first is that I have a number of different programs that are evergreen that you can like access throughout the year, but I'm also 3 times a year I do a group cohort. So the group cohort is for people who want to like kind of accelerate their learning with structure and accountability and in a group format with other people. So that is starting the end of this month. And in advance of that, I have a free event, which no obligation, anyone can come to. And I have a goal for everyone to like really make a big, powerful shift at the end of this event. So it's next week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And it's called the Wealth Wellness Lounge. And it's, Tuesday, Thursday, 5:30 PST or PDT, I guess we're still in, and Saturday morning, 10 a.m. And I'll talk about each of the 3 pillars that I work in, do some teachings in each, and then there'll be some homework so that at the end of the week, I really want people to start living off that allowance. That's my goal.
Oh,
So
I love
people are
that.
living off their allowance. Yeah.
So we'll make sure
Yeah.
that all those links are in the description too, so they're nice and easy to find.
Mhm.
I want to just say, if for people who are like thinking about this, I am like, I love a good evergreen. I think that there's something really beautiful about having something on demand and instant gratification of sign up and get it right away. But I have to tell you, and this is the reason I have this community, there is magic in doing it in a group. There is
Yeah,
something so healing and so powerful
I
about
agree.
being witnessed, especially when it's fucking vulnerable, like money.
Yeah,
Like
I
it's
agree.
it's going to be next level. I haven't taken her program, so I'm not, I can't be like, oh yeah, I can vouch for this, but I know Sarah and I know the power not just of this work but of doing this work in community, that doing it through a cohort that rather than a self-study is going to be enriching in ways that just are not available in any of the formats. So
Yeah,
something to think
yeah.
about, my 2 cents.
No, and I totally agree. And I love groups too, just because that's how I've done a lot of my own personal development. The reason I'll tell you why I decided to do Evergreen is because I really wanted people to have a choose your own adventure, because people have so much. Basically, I didn't want a group cohort to be a reason why people didn't do their money stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you feel more comfortable starting in an evergreen, that's totally cool. There's still monthly calls. We still get together once a month in the evergreen and Q&A. And then if you ever want to upgrade into one of the groups, you can. So there's like, you can tiptoe your way in. But I 1000% agree, Seryna, and in terms of the power of group. And for me, this was a lived experience. So the group that I joined, so going back to the beginning of my story about like being 6 years behind in my taxes, the group that I joined, there was a person in that group saying very similar thing. And so immediately I was like, oh my God, I don't feel so alone.
Not just
You know,
me.
with a lot of the stuff, you're like, I'm the only person in the world who hasn't done their taxes in 6 years.
And no
Like
one's talking about it. So of course you believe that.
totally, totally. But then what happened is the two of us became accountability buddies. And once or twice a week, we would get on the phone. And I was so proud of myself. Within 3 months, I had all of my stuff to my accountant. I hadn't got the returns or anything, but like my part of the work was done. And it was like, oh my gosh, 6+ years of burden gone in 3 months.
3 months.
And I couldn't have done it without that person. And I thank them they're still sort of in my life, and I'm like, oh, so great, like so grateful for that person. So It is powerful. It's can be hard, vulnerability and shame, you know. I mean, Brené Brown, look at those two YouTube talks, classic, right? But that's the power of opening up in a group about the money stuff, is it's yeah, it just dissolves that stuff so quickly.
I love you. I love that you have
Aw.
made this pivot.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Seryna.
Thank you for sharing your magic with us.
Thank you so much. I really am thankful to be here, and thank you for your question, Nicole. It was really beautiful to witness your share, and
Oh, thank you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, thank you for this. This was really amazing.
awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We'll
Yeah.
make sure that all of your links are super available, not just for your challenges, but your social, so that when our people want to, give you a little internet stalking, then we can make that happen, make it nice and easy.
Totally.
Because there's something about
Totally.
filling your feed with inspiring people, and
I agree.
yeah, just
Yeah.
do it. Just give her a follow. It's gonna be good.
Totally.
I promise.
Oh yeah, and I do have the monthly tapping calls too. I do
Oh,
free
nice.
monthly group tapping because I just love that modality, and it just is a way to like deal with the internal stuff. So yeah, two options there. If people want to
It's amazing. Awesome.
take another journey next week. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that wraps up another call. I just feel so grateful that people are willing to come and share their magic with us. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Nicole, for coming and joining today. We will see you again next month with another call, another interview, another inspiring story.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Stop the recording.